It's the halfway stage at the castle, and it sees a bold move take a surprising turn. The previous episode left us wondering what would the traitors reply to Matthew's suggestion of a deal to refuse to recruit and kill Jesse instead, then recruit Matthew at the next opportunity. We also had Harriet's questions still to come. In my previous video, I thought that regardless whether the traitors tell Matthew they have a deal, they should get rid of him at the first possible opportunity. I just don't think it's a good idea to recruit him later on. Stephen's thought was that Matthew was someone they could potentially throw under the bus after recruiting him. Rachel and Stephen wrote that they had a deal. If I thought Matthew's questions were bold, Harriet said, "Hold my beer." She decided to take an entirely different route, one that even caught the traitors off guard. Harriet told them what she does and that she was a former barrister. Harriet asked who their top 3 to recruit was, and they wrote Harriet, Jesse and Sam. Harriet's question was like she was gently easing them into what she was about to lay on them. She was not playing about. Harriet said that she knows Rachel was in the confessional and asked if they were going to continue to work in a pack and protect Rachel. After the initial shock, the answer was no, take her. I would not want to face Harriet in anything. Like Rachel, I am also scared of Harriet. I felt like I had done something wrong and I wasn't even in the room with her. As everyone started to enter breakfast, I was wondering what questions was Rachel going to pretend to ask, and would Matthew and Harriet tell the others about their conversations with the traitors. Roxy and Matthew wanted to have a conversation with the rest of the winning team before speaking to the rest of the players about what happened after they won the previous mission. Harriet had other plans. Harriet was done. I guess I could turn the phrase from no more Mr. Nice Guy to no more Mrs. Nice Gal. She didn't want to take 5 with the winning team. Harriet told them everything, from her current job and previous job to what she told the traitors, even saying to everyone she thinks it's Rachel. Things got a tad bit heated and Roxy didn't appreciate the way Harriet spoke to people. My thought was Roxy needs to watch herself because she can be seen as trying to defend Rachel. To the others, it might also look like Harriet is a traitor. I think Harriet went in a little too hard at breakfast. It felt like her blood was boiling and I'm not sure why she went from 0 to 100 so quickly. It was going to make for an interesting round table, seeing as Harriet didn't want to speak to Rachel until then. The players needed to split into 3 teams. There were 100 coins in the fountain and they needed the coins that had cherubs on one side and a location on the other. At the locations were statues that they needed to take back to the fountain. Up to £10,000 could be added, but it came with a couple of sticking points. It was an all or nothing mission, so they needed to find all 8 to be able to bank the money for the prize pot. At the base of each of the statues was a shield. For every shield found and used, £1,000 would be deducted from their possible winnings. Like with the money, if they didn't get all the statues within the time limit of 30 minutes, they wouldn't win shields either. Faraz, Jesse, Jade, Jack, Stephen and Rachel took a shield with the blessing of their teammates. On Sam's team, he had suggested only taking 1 shield, which would protect the whole team and keep as much money as possible, which the team had agreed on. Sam's plan only works if there isn't a traitor on the team, but luckily there was no traitor on their team, but someone did betray them when James took a shield secretly. If Rachel's team were really paying attention, they would question why Rachel needs a shield when someone has publicly declared war on them to get them banished. With Harriet waiting to present her case, Rachel would be a player the traitors would keep in if she was a faithful. All the players got back in time with all 8 statues at the fountain, but with most of the shields taken, only £3,000 was added to the prize pot. Once it was worked out that either Adam, James, Jesse, Harriet or Sam took a shield in secret, there were a lot of annoyed players, including those from that team. After vehemently denying he took the shield, James ended up telling Harriet, then the rest of his group. The rest of the group wasn't surprised it was him. After all the build-up and gusto Harriet built up, I couldn't wait for the case she was going to present about Rachel. What was presented wasn't as good as I thought it would be. It ended up being the equivalent of a deflated ball, the kind that requires an NFL investigation. It was a bit tepid compared to what she presented against Hugo. Later, some of the things Harriet was saying sounded like the ramblings of a madwoman. She thought there were 4 traitors with a possible 5th. Even though I know she's right about Rachel, I just wasn't convinced convinced by what Harriet had laid out. Harriet was actually telling the rest of them to vote for her. Harriet must have been done with the game. It just felt like that to me. She was basically sacrificing her game to get her point across. This was a really bizarre way to go. Could you imagine if she was actually wrong this whole time? It turns out Harriet's earlier revelation about her job wasn't the only truth we were going to hear. It was a day of revelation, as Rachel told them about her training by a former FBI agent. Matthew was questioned about keeping his time with the traitors a secret. To be fair to Matthew, I think he gave a decent argument as to why he was keeping it a secret, though we know the real reason. Adam wasn't really convinced and voted for Matthew. Roxy had questioned why Harriet wanted to give up her chance to talk to the traitors and deemed Harriet must be a traitor because of it. If Roxy had even thought for a minute, she would question why would a traitor want to give a faithful this opportunity. The least amount of faithfuls the better. The only reason they would want a faithful to have the chance was if they wanted to manipulate them in a certain way. At Harriet's request, most of the players voted for her and Harriet was banished. There were some that did think Harriet was a traitor, and it will be interesting to see if there's any fallout for Matthew and Roxy, who were very confidently leading the charge against Harriet. The other player who didn't vote for Harriet was Ellie. I said in a previous video that I only thought there was 1 or 2 clued on faithfuls left. One has now gone, and there's question marks on the 1.5 that was left on my list. There's a couple of people that we still barely see anything of, namely Jack, but mostly Jade. They only seem to include Jade in the edit when she gets accused of being a traitor, which is every roundtable. I've previously said I didn't think the original traitors would win, but this is the moment I think at least one of them actually will. I think they've got an excellent opportunity to both win. Fiona's banishment helped Stephen in more ways than I can count, and he seems to be completely off anyone's radar at the moment. Rachel seems to acquire more and more standing within the group. I don't think the faithfuls will even pay attention to most of what Harriet said, especially about Rachel. They seem like they're dismissing some or most of it because of her behaviour throughout the day. They're not listening to the message because of the way it was packaged. I think Rachel played the whole situation really well. In a way, it's good for her that she didn't go after Harriet. That role lies firmly with Matthew and Roxy, and there's eyes already on them. The traitors have the opportunity to recruit, and they needed to pick between that or murder. The traitors had a big decision after choosing to murder. They didn't want to pick someone from their groups, but with 2 shields found by the other group, consisting of Adam, James, Jesse and Sam, they had a 50% chance of missing, though they seemed to rule out going for Sam. If they missed, then the faithfuls could come to the conclusion that there was a recruitment, which would make them even more paranoid. The possible speculation could even dampen Matthew's hopes of being recruited, and maybe he has a little change in behaviour that could end up causing him some problems later in the game. The only thing that the traitors haven't thought about is that going for the other team might end up pointing things back in their direction, if the faithfuls were smart enough to even think that way.